It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in ever so wisely to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, the one and only, the ever so beloved Todd Huff. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk. Look, listen, as I've shared before, when I started this program almost 10 years ago, to be 10 years, August 10th of this year, 10 years, which is crazy. Started podcasting in the bedroom closet. 10 years ago, one of my concerns was, what do I do if it's a slow news day? Which, of course, is kind of laughable. Laughable now to think that we were at a point where that was something that a newbie like myself was considering all of these years ago. Now I have to think in terms of what do I not get to? And there's a lot of stuff out there vying for our attention. I want to start with something today that I think is important. It's not necessarily, it's out there in the news, but it's not front and center, right? It's not immigration. It's not Biden's cancer diagnosis and all of that stuff, right? What does that mean? The further evidence that the media is colluding with the Biden administration, with the Democrat Party. They had done that to deceive us, to gaslight us. Now they're out there trying to profit off of us. Listen, I'm not a boycott guy, but I hope Jake Tapper, I hope that book falls flat, because the guy doesn't deserve to be compensated for telling us information after it is largely irrelevant. Now, it's relevant in the sense that we need to be aware of it and make sure that the scenario that allowed that to happen, where Biden was just completely unfit in numerous ways, that has to be stopped. We have to learn the lesson, and whatever setup and scenario that existed that allows that to happen needs to be dismantled and stopped from happening. And part of that means we can't compensate these true sophists and professional deceivers like Jake Tapper. If I had it my way, he would lose money bigly on this book, because he knew these things. I don't care what he says. He either knew them and didn't tell us, or he didn't know them because he just didn't have any concern. He wanted to make sure that there was no curiosity or poking around with that issue. But those things are important, and I want to get to more of that because I think that this is incredibly important stuff. But there's other things that are less than that I think still hold what Rush used to call teachable moments. And I want to play a clip. Of Rachel Maddow talking about cuts to the National Weather Service, implying that what we saw, we had tornadoes go through this general part of the country on Friday night, last Friday. It was some really rough weather. We didn't have tornadoes here that I'm aware of. I think they might have been around, but I'm talking really local to me. But we had a storm go through. I was driving. I was on the less severe side of it, and I think the winds were 70, 80 miles an hour. It was rough. I mean, it blew stuff all over the place. Anyway, I want to talk about this because I think it illustrates what we've already talked about on this program before when we look at cutting the size and scope of our federal government. It also raises some other questions that I think are necessary for us to wrestle with and get answers to as we do what's best for this country, as we protect our constitutional republic, keep government in its proper lanes, and fight for a smaller, reduced sized a government that's smaller in size. That's what we're fighting for, among many other things, including the truth on this program, which, of course, this program is a beacon of light, shining brightly upon, shining the truth here on this program. Before I get down the path of talking about Rachel Maddow playing this clip for you, I want to tell you really quickly that before I started this program 10 years ago. There was a couple of year period where as I was kind of learning, candidly, how to do the program, growing the initial growth phase and so forth, I had another business. And that other business we sold in 2019, 6 years ago. We sold this business. And the business, the reason I sold it was because it had gotten to the point to where, hey, I have to focus on the show exclusively now. And so I sold the business. The business, I had a 6-year non-compete with the business. And, initially, I got to be honest, I never really thought I would reopen the business. It's not because I didn't enjoy it or anything like that. I just didn't envision that in my plan. But as things have, as I've traveled this journey, over the past year or so, as I realized I was getting close to the end of this period of a non-compete, which expired technically over the weekend, I decided, you know what? I'm dealing with people that are in this space as it is. I mean, we're dealing here with the show with lots of businesses who need to get their message advertised, get their message out to people. It complements Freedom Marketplace. It complements the people who advertise here on the show. But I decided to relaunch the business. Now, it's a new business, and it's a division, I guess you could say, of what we're doing here. It's under its own brand name. It's called Red, White, and Brand. Red, White, and Brand is a business that helps customers, businesses, helps anyone who needs to put their logo on something. We can put your logo on almost anything. And really, it's anything. I put the word almost in there because there's always a possibility that there's something really strange that we can't get someone's logo, message, brand, and so forth on to an item. Now, we're talking apparel. We can help people set up. If you have a business, you can have a place where you can get your company apparel online. You can, give new hires a place to go and to get that. You can order things in bulk if you have an event, t-shirts, banners, promotional products. Maybe you do job fairs. Maybe you do fairs, events. That's what Red, White, and Brand helps people do. Put your logo on almost anything, front and center, to be proud of your brand. And so we're going to make this a discount available to you. If you're in a business, if you have a sports league, if there's something that needs to be produced with the logo, jerseys, there's a lot that we can do with our network of wholesale suppliers and so forth. So Red, White, and Brand is the name of the company. The website should be up here in the next, by the beginning of June. If you're interested, we're giving a 10% discount, and of course, we're going to use discount code Todd. That's my name, just like most of the other discount codes you will hear on here. Discount code Todd will save you 10% off your first purchase. What you want to do, though, right now is text 317, text the word Todd, 317-210. You'll notice this is the show number. Text Todd to 317-210-2830. Again, text Todd to 317-210-2830. And we'll be in touch about how we can help you. But by doing that, you're going to get a 10% discount, and we're here to help you however we can. You're helping the show. You're getting, listen, we used to do in the past, some pretty well-known and big companies and so forth. And we're looking to provide these services again. And working with a patriotic company, working with a company that knows how to get you what you need at an affordable price, a very fair price, and you'll get a discount to boot, and you're pushing in the same direction. We're pushing in the same direction, I should say, as you are with your conservative principles and values. So text the word Todd to 317-210-2830. All right, I put that behind me now. Let's get to Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow goes to her show. I actually had this in the stack yesterday, so I think this was from Monday. So let's go back a bit. Over the weekend, there were some really bad tornadoes. In fact, Kentucky got hit very bad, or very hard, I should say. Southern Indiana had some tornadoes as well. There's been a lot of tornadoes around the country. In fact, I've seen some numbers, especially in this part of the country. Arkansas has gotten hammered. Illinois, Southern Illinois in particular, has gotten hammered. Indiana, I think Kentucky's gotten hammered several times. And so it's a real problem. This time of year. And listen, I'm old enough to know that these things happen almost in cycles. There are years where the springtime weather is very mild. You'll have an occasional thunderstorm, and an occasional severe thunderstorm. It's very common in this part of the country. For those of you who are outside of the Midwest or the Plains, parts of the South, Southeast, it may sound weird to say this, but seeing tornado watch, severe thunderstorm watch warning, tornado warning on a television, or getting those alerts beep across your television or radio or whatever, that's not uncommon in this part of the country. In fact, there's periods of time where it's on a daily basis. But then there's periods of time when the weather is nice. And normally it's these transitional seasons, in particular the spring season, where you have, of course, the cold air that's still trying to come down from the north on occasion, the warm air coming from the west or coming up from the Gulf. And it just, sometimes the weather patterns make those air masses collide right over the top of us. And it can produce some nasty, nasty stuff. In fact, I saw that there was a tornado in Kansas that some believe it's not been graded yet on the enhanced Fujita scale. But some people think it might be an EF5 tornado. That would be the first EF5 in 12 years, as I understand it. Anyway, so bad weather is part of being in the Midwest. Now, I'll go back. I remember in second grade, I was a second grader. I stayed home from school I was sick, or I was skipping school. I don't know. But I was sick, home from school, second grader. We had a tornado literally go through our backyard. And I mean, it just barely missed the house. We lived on an acre lot, and the tornado went through there. We had a pull-behind camper in the backyard. It flipped it over. My brother and I, my parents had put in a big old swing set. Big swing set. That thing got ripped out of the ground, tangled up, and you can see the path that this tornado took. There's a subdivision, another, half mile to the north of us, where we grew up, and it hit a house up there. I mean, it wasn't a powerful tornado, but it ripped off roofing and that sort of stuff. And so I remember that. I remember going into the bathroom. We didn't have a basement. I remember going to the bathroom and hearing the sound of the air pressure changing. And you could hear coming through the drains, just this sound that, I don't want to do it on the radio, but it was a distinct sound. I remember prior to going into the bathroom, which is why my mom pulled my brother and I in there, but was because the sky turned, I've never seen it do this. I mean, pea green. And we were in that bathroom for probably a minute or two before that tornado went through our backyard. And I remember that. I don't remember any warnings. I just remember having common sense. The sky's pea green. You could tell something was going on. We took shelter. It was maybe storming a little bit. I don't remember the storm part. I just remember the tornado. I also remember in my senior year of high school, 1996, I remember a storm coming through here and dropping hail, I kid you not, the size between baseball and softball size. It hailed here yesterday, probably like pea size or something like that. That's not uncommon either. Again, it's not an everyday occurrence, but it's hailed several times here this spring already. But never anything like this. I mean, it busted windows out of cars. It put holes in people's vinyl siding. It destroyed, absolutely obliterated roofs. Knocked windows out of houses. I mean, this is serious sort of stuff. But I remember these storms, and there's not many of them that reached that level. But I remember those two in particular. I also remember September 20th of 2002, an EF3 tornado went through Martinsville, which is about 20 minutes to our south here. And it did lots of damage. In fact, I remember one parking lot. I remember seeing photos. Cars were flipped over. It looked like a bomb had, windows busted out. Looked like a bomb had been set off. Lots of damage happened there. And we all have these, especially if you grew up in this part of the country, live in this part of the country, you have those experiences. And I got to tell you, there was a warning in 2002, but the other storms, that hailstorm in 96, the tornado going through my backyard in probably 1986, I don't remember any warning, I don't remember any watch. In fact, last night, there were storms that went through here that were pretty darn strong. In fact, there were reports of funnel clouds and rotation. I don't think there were tornadoes, but maybe. Definitely hail. There were several rounds of hail, and there was some very, very strong winds. No, I don't remember any watch or warning. The point here is that that's not uncommon for there to not be any warning. Sometimes, usually there's usually a watch because it seems like certain times in the spring there's just a thunderstorm watch every day. But sometimes there's nothing. I think last night there was truly nothing. But Rachel Maddow, when talking about these storms that went through Kentucky in particular, and they were devastating, by the way. You may have seen the videos of the tornado that went through downtown St. Louis, Missouri. I've got a clip, a soundbite of the mayor of St. Louis talking about that. Anyway, all that being said, Rachel Maddow wants to blame Trump and Trump's budget cuts for the lack of warning or not enough warning or whatever she says is going on here. Sorry, here, I got to cue this up. There we go. So we talked about this, and I remember sharing with you, we talked about Trump's budget cuts and the reduction of the size of government and so forth. I remember saying to you that, hey, this is necessary. We have to rein in our government. And some of these things are easy to make the case for, these reductions and cuts and so forth, what Doge was doing. And I've also said the further that we dig, the more that we get into, you're going to get past the issues that everybody agrees on, right? Everybody can agree on waste, fraud, and abuse. Everyone can agree that there shouldn't be a $40 billion spending spree on personal credit cards as is being reported in the media. I've got that, right-wing media, conservative media. I've got that in the stack of stuff as well. But those things are easy to say that we should be against. Now, there is a specific role for our government, and we've talked about that. We talk about that on this program. The role of our government is outlined in the Constitution. The government should be doing what's in the Constitution and nothing more. If the government is doing more, let's just say that they are and accept that for a moment, the government should be most focused on the part of its job that's in the Constitution. I'm not saying they should be doing something more. I'm saying even if I can't get people to agree with that, surely we can agree that the things that are in the Constitution are the priorities of the government. Even if someone says, well, this is okay for the government to do, sort of thing, even though it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution. Surely we would agree that there are some core functions of the government that they should be doing and they should be focused on. Now, is that how does the Weather Service play a role in this? It's interesting when you think about the role of a government, especially the role of a government that really is built upon free markets and free people. The federal government should only be stepping in and becoming involved in providing things if, and it doesn't mean, listen, just because the private sector isn't currently providing something or isn't capable of doing something, That's not just a free pass and a green light for the government to do it. But let's say the post office was a great example when Benjamin Franklin, was making the case and pushing for the post office. I mean, there's nothing to say that you have to have a post office, but you can see why it provided value to the republic. In fact, if I'm correct, I think the Postal Service used to do 2 routes a day back in the old days. They were busting their hump. It's hard to get the post office to do one round of service today. Anyway, besides, the point here is that whatever the role of our government is, one of the fundamental questions that we should be asking is this something the private sector can do? And if it can, then why is the government doing it? Right? That would be one of my biggest arguments against the post office. I could say, in the 1770s, the 1800s, we hadn't built an infrastructure. The business community hadn't developed to the point where it could provide these services. If it's a good and necessary service, then the government can fill it if the government can, provide it, and if you've got the support to pass the legislation that permits it, that sort of thing. That's one thing. But if in today's world with FedEx and DHL and other forms of private delivery and couriers and UPS and all of this stuff, you could immediately say that it's no longer necessary. Now we keep the Postal Service because it employs people, and we don't want to make a dramatic change to that. Again, if you work there, listen, I'm not trying to put it down. The Postal Service does carry a reputation, but there are people that work hard everywhere. There are good workers everywhere. If you work at the Postal Service, I'm sure you're a good employee. If you're tuning into this program, I think that you're probably a person that's putting forth a good work ethic. But my point here is to say that just because the government can doesn't mean that the government should. But let's just assume that the only way that we can monitor weather in this country is with the National Weather Service. Okay, I'll accept that. We've built this network, we've got radars, we've got technology, but now we've got the distribution of that technology. Now we've got people who have their own YouTube channels or TikTok channels or both, where these people are streaming. They're storm chasers, they're just weather experts. They might not be the weatherman on the local news station, but they have an incredible amount of knowledge. They have an incredible amount of followers, and they're incredibly good at predicting or alerting people as to what's going on. I think we need to at least be mindful of that particular part of this puzzle. And in that sense, the information to the actual person living in a community that's in the crosshairs of a storm, while the alert may or may not be coming from the National Weather Service, there's more information and more ways to get alerted and warned with cell phones and all that sort of stuff than ever before. I've got to take a break. I want to talk about this. I want to play what she says and how she's trying to blame Trump for really the devastation, or not the devastation, but the injuries and death. She's definitely pointing in that direction. So take a time out. Continue this on the other side of the break, my friends. Sit tight. Back in just a minute.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends. Gonna get to this Rachel Maddow soundbite in a minute, when she basically is, insinuating that Trump's at fault here for the people who tragically lost their lives in this tour. It's unbelievable to me the more I think about this. But before I get to that, my friends, are you a salesperson? If you are, you know that results are what matter. That is what you are compensated to do. Whether you are on a salary plus commission, you get straight commission, you only get paid ultimately if you are closing sales and bringing in business. That's how it works. And if you're not, my friends, if you're getting a salary and you're not producing, the clock is ticking as to how long the company is going to keep that salesperson on payroll. Matt Easton and Easton University is here to help you get the results that you are looking for. Matt's system is, I'm telling you, one of the best systems, if not the best, that I've ever seen. And I compare it back in my day to Zig Ziglar's sales training, which I thought was top-notch. But Matt's is up there. It's relevant. It's, of course, modern in the sense that it takes into account some of these other channels and just the way that the world works today. And it's practical. It's proven. It's built to help you sell smarter, to close faster, and to make more money. So I think this is a great opportunity to get coaching and training from one of the best in the business. Go to toddhuffshow.com/Easton, EASTON. If you sign up to become a student through that link, you're going to get you're going to become a member of the university, which is the most valuable thing you can do to learn about sales, in my estimation. But on top of that, you're going to get a bonus as a listener of this program. Matt Easton is going to jump on a call with you personally to walk you through your sales challenges and help you get started. You'll get one-on-one help from one of the best in the business. So if you follow the system, it's going to pay off. Take that first step today. My friends, I believe you will be thanking me later, thanking Matt, thanking yourself, most importantly. toddhuffshow.com/Easton is where you can go. Again, toddhuffshow.com/Easton, EASTON. All right. With no further ado, let's play this soundbite from Rachel Maddow complaining about budget cuts to the National Weather Service, which she suggests, at least alludes to. She doesn't come right out and say it, but she dances all around this, suggesting that Trump's DOGE cuts and so forth are to blame for the tragic loss of life.
And it's not just the agency that responds to severe weather that's under strain right now. It's also the agency that tells us what the weather is, that predicts and tracks and warns us about severe weather. As tornadoes struck Missouri on Friday, very, very severe storms also battered Kentucky. One tornado in southeastern Kentucky killed 19 people. The government agency that provides weather data for every weather station and every weather app and monitors storms and sends out emergency alerts for all kinds of severe weather is the National Weather Service. And the National Weather Service in Kentucky has 3 offices. None of them is fully staffed because of Trump's cuts to the National Weather Service. The office that handles forecasts for eastern Kentucky, where Friday's tornado struck, it's short 7 staff members, which means that, among other things, the office no longer has an overnight staff at all.
But hang in there. That's not entirely true.
Because, again, obviously, we would hope that severe weather has the decency to only strike during business hours. At any of the 3 offices in Kentucky, there is no meteorologist in charge now. Now, to be clear, we don't know if those staffing shortages in Kentucky had any effect on the ability of the Weather Service to manage and predict and send out appropriate alerts about Friday's storms. There's no reason to think that the Weather Service was anyway at fault for what happened.
So wait a minute. Why are you telling us this then? Why are you saying there's no way to say that? In fact, you're saying it's not the Weather Service's fault. There's no way to she's not suggesting that these cuts had any impact. Well, then what are you talking about then? What is this, an exercise in futility like the rest of your program? What is this about? Why are you saying these things if there's not a relation of causation here? Are they not related whatsoever? I mean, this seems to be the whole reason to say what you're saying. But she's saying that there's no way to suggest. She's not suggesting that the Weather Service is at fault or that people weren't notified in a timely fashion. I guess she's just sounding the alarm for what could happen next time. I suppose that's what she's trying to say here, but certainly not the way it sounded at the beginning of this clip. She continues.
What happened in terms of the devastating impact of those storms. The agency says the Jackson office was staffed overnight for that one night on Friday because of the expected severe weather.
So pause, stop everything. Stop. Remember earlier in the clip, I told you, hang in there. She said that none of them are staffed overnight. What did she just say? She just said that the Weather Service was staffed overnight because they knew that this weather was coming. She said that they weren't staffed, but they are staffed. Now, she's trying to make the point here to say, well, they're not just 24/7 staff. This has to be apparently a case where inclement weather is coming and they know, hey, this is something that we need to have people show up to work for. I've got a friend who manages a utility. He provides water to customers. Someone's on call. Someone's on call all the time, and if there's a leak, that person is responsible for trying to get it fixed. Other people, I guess, maybe get called in if it requires a team of people or whatever. But there's not someone sitting in the water company 24/7 with shovel in hand just waiting for some water main to break or some service line to be busted or whatever, right? I mean, but they still show up when the problem arises. Why can't, if you are looking at the weather, and we've made great advancements with the weather, and you can look at it and you can see, some of these weather events, they're predicting days or weeks in advance. Now, they can't say a tornado is going to go, hit this mile marker on I-70 4 days in advance, but they could get fairly accurate with where it appears that these unstable systems may spawn tornadoes. And they know what they're looking for. Earlier, I told you some of my experiences with severe weather. Some of those date back almost 40 years now to 1986 when that tornado went through my backyard. They in some cases, the Weather Service had no idea that was even happening back in those days. And you go back further than that, and people were completely on their own as far as that was concerned. I always marvel when I think about the pioneers and when they got to the Great Plains. And if they got out there and were in one of these nasty storms, statistically that had to happen to somebody. I'm not saying they were hit with an EF5, but some of these folks had to endure some incredibly terrible weather. But they headed across the plains anyway, right? Listen, I'm not minimizing what happened. I'm saying that we've made advancements, and we can tell when conditions are right for thunderstorms or when it's going to be sunny and pleasant. With some exceptions, I understand that. But she acts like no one was going to be there on the night that these storms hit, which would have been Friday evening, overnight on Friday. That's when it got really bad. She acts as though that no one was going to warn people about anything, but that simply wasn't the case. Now, are there other factors to consider? Absolutely. Is it tragic and horrible that these people lost their lives? 100%. Would any other warning have prevented that? That's a far stretch of the imagination. It's conceivable, but is there evidence to support that? She's actually saying there's evidence to support that none of that would have made any difference because it doesn't sound like anything was done incorrectly here. Now, I will tell you, I did see a clip from one of these meteorologists named Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall was telling people, I think it was 45 minutes, I believe, he was warning people in one particular part of the country. I think it was in Kentucky. I'm not sure. There's a classification that the Weather Service will give, and I forget the name of it, but it's like a tornado emergency. It's something like that. I can look it up during the break. But if they declare that, then that means there is absolutely some devastating tornado going through the area, like it is coming sort of thing. And he was saying I think it was 45 minutes. He was making that call on his stream or whatever before the Weather Service made the call. Now, some people will say, aha, Todd, that's because they didn't have enough people. But I'm like, well, here's a guy that started this. Now, he has people that are spotters that are reporting to him and everything else, but why, if he knows, why can't the Weather Service? It seems to me that there's, while staffing certainly is a potential factor, we can't be naive to the fact that you can cut staff to the point to where you can't function and do your job. That's too small. That's too much of a cut. There is such a thing as too much of a cut. If the government's going to do it, you got to give them the tools to do it, or they don't do it. But if they're supposed to do it, they got to have the tools. And I get that. But I also get that they could have been watching him. How does Ryan Hall? I just watch it then. Use some of the information that you're getting from these folks. It seems to me that you could certainly say staffing is a factor, but you could also say the nature of government is a factor and how they function in that governing situation isn't the way that the rest of us function in our day-to-day lives. Timeout's in order, my friends. Sit tight. Back in just a minute.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Yes, my friends, welcome back. I looked up during the break. The term that I could not think of on the spot is called a tornado emergency. It's the highest level of alert or warning or whatever that's issued by the National Weather Service. It's issued, according here to the National Weather Service website, it's issued when a violent tornado has touched down in the watch area. There is a severe threat to human life and property with catastrophic damage confirmed. So that's a tornado emergency, and that's what Ryan Hall, one of these, some of you may follow him. I don't really follow, I do see him, but I don't follow anybody like that on social media. I try not to do much of that stuff, but I do know from the things I've seen about him, he seems to be extraordinarily good at some of this. Some of the analysis and predictions and warnings. I mean, he'll say stuff. I have seen clips of him saying stuff like, this is by the Circle K gas station on 231 and 42 or some such thing. It's crazy, the level of pinpoint accuracy. You compare that, I compare that in my mind to what I had as a kid, or even what we have today with local news. Now, the news is different. They're talking to people. I don't know if it's different or not, but they're talking with people in a specific area. Everybody that's tuned in is, in Metro Indianapolis, and so they're trying to give warnings for everybody. I don't know. It's maybe a little bit different scenario. And he's talking to people all over the place. But he's focusing on certain storms, and he'll dive in and say, okay, we've got, this particular storm. There should be a tornado emergency. This is, a clear indication of violent destruction associated with this tornado. I'm saying if he can do this, why can't the National Weather Service? Why can't the National Weather Service with its sources, with its resources, do this sort of thing? Why don't they watch him as well? I mean, what's wrong with that? If we're tuning, do you care who warned you, by the way? I mean, if the neighbor calls you during a storm and says they saw a funnel cloud, are you going to say, well, the National Weather Service hasn't told me anything yet? I mean, it's just, I don't know. To me, there's a lot of, just a lack of sense from people. And I also think that there's a lot of trust in the government and people who don't trust private companies and individuals the same way, which I understand. I do understand. But once someone has proven their abilities, their capabilities, their skill in a particular area, like, say, Ryan Hall or some of these other folks, I'm not trying to promote his channel. I'm just saying he's the one that I saw. There's a lot of other good people out there doing this. Once they've proven that they have knowledge, why wouldn't people listen to them? Some people say, well, what are your credentials? In fact, that reminds me. I just was reading, I'm going through the Bible, 2 Corinthians. And Paul's writing a letter back to the church at Corinth. And they say the people, Paul's responding to what the people are saying. And it's apparent that the people are questioning Paul's credentials. Paul apparently wasn't a eloquent speaker. And so they had other people come through that, hey, this guy kind of made me feel good. This guy really said that a certain way. I'm a follower of Apollos, I'm a follower of this guy. And Paul says, no, what are you talking about? We all follow Jesus. And by the way, my credentials are you exist, right? So, and Paul wasn't saying that arrogantly. Paul knew that the church ultimately only exists because of God and his son Jesus. But Paul was saying, what do you need my credentials for? I'm the one that spread the message and then helped you guys form yourselves. Now you don't trust my credentials. Right? So one of the things I've had to deal with myself as I've had this program. What are your credentials? What do you mean, what are my credentials? Listen to the show, see if it makes sense, see if we make any predictions or calls that come true, which we did. We did with this sort of stuff. This is a perfect see I told you so moment, as Rush used to call these. I said that anytime that something happened that had anything to do with the governing agency and it wasn't good, the result was bad, the outcome was bad. Like this example, there's tornado deaths. Rachel Maddow says, well, the people that warn us about tornadoes had their budgets cut. There's not as many of them working, so therefore has to be the budget cuts. I said that this was going to happen. Anytime that something bad happens, they'll point to this. But it's not as though on the other side of the budget cuts, the pre-budget cut nonsense that we've had to go through and look at all the waste, fraud, abuse, and all this sort of stuff, it wasn't like they were batting 1,000 then. And again, what does she want? I mean, obviously we all want no one to perish in a storm. But is that something that we even have control over? We can look at becoming better informed. We can look at finding ways to streamline information. I think in terms of, let's get this information. Let's let people be able to access it. All these people that are like Orion Hall or whoever, BAM, whoever it is, these folks that are talking about the weather, let them build their audiences. Let them communicate. Let them prove their value in the free market using that information, that publicly available information, but helping people to make sense of it, helping people to be aware of the risk, the threat, the danger, the imminent catastrophe that may be impending upon them. And that's, I think, all we can do is to get that out quicker. Gotta go, though. SDG.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.